Good evening. It is an honor to welcome you all to this special occasion, marking not just the launch of the book Kashmir Under 370, but also the 5th anniversary of a historic milestone, the abrogation of Article 370. 5 years ago, on this very day, the abrogation of Article 370 opened a new chapter for Jammu and Kashmir, one that is aimed at bringing peace, development, and integration. Today, we gather to reflect on that journey and honor the sacrifices that were made along the way. To get this launch started, I would like to call Parth from Juggernaut Books to introduce the book.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Juggernaut Books, it is my privilege to welcome you all here to the launch of Kashmir Under 370 by Mr. Mahendra Sabharwal. Mr. Sabharwal was Director General of J&K Police from 1993 to 1997 and later served in Delhi as Special Director Intelligence Bureau, Director General of CRPF, and Secretary Security. Mr. Sabharwal was the first IPS officer to be directly assigned the Jammu and Kashmir cadre in 1964. But when he retired in 2001, after serving as Chief of the State's Police, he was not permitted to buy land and settle down there. Mr. Sabharwal was seen as an outsider in the state he loved and had served for close to 4 decades. This book, Kashmir Under 370, is a sharply observed and astutely analytical personal history of J&K. It is a lament for the years and lives lost and a critique of the cynical politics that have hamstrung the state. In Kashmir Under 370, we meet a cast of characters, the prime ministers, governors, chief ministers, and politicians who have controlled Kashmir's fate. We see them through Mr. Sabharwal's eyes and hear the words and thoughts they expressed behind closed doors. We get an unsparing assessment of key players with an unusual moral clarity. But more than that, we get a feel of what it means to be boots on the ground. From dodging a mob and containing the fallout of Zulfikar Bhutto's hanging, to handling the sieges of Hazrat Bal and managing the funeral marches of fallen separatists, we get an extraordinary ringside view of politics and policing in J&K. In fact, based on intelligence gathered from captured Pakistani terrorists, Mr. Sabharwal had even warned American security officials long before 9/11 about plans to target them, but was ignored. With the abrogation of Article 370, audacious cross-border retaliation for Pakistan-sponsored terror strikes, and India's economic rise, Mr. Sabharwal sees reasons for optimism. The ingredients, he argues, for a more hopeful future have come together for the first time in history. And while much needs to be done, a promising start has been made. It is our honor to have published this important work, and it is my privilege now to call Mr. Sabharwal onto the stage to say a few words.
Good evening, Vikram. Namaskar, Adab, and good evening. In 1964, destiny decided that I would be the first Indian Police Service probationer directly allocated to Jammu and Kashmir. But my retirement years since 2001 haven't been spent in J&K because unlike my civil service batchmates who mostly retired in their allocated cadre states, Article 370 designated Veena and me as outsiders and prohibited us from buying a house in our adopted Madre Watan, that is motherland. We both related to Bahadur Shah Zafar's lament, कितना है बदनसीब जफर दफन के लिए, 2 गज जमीन भी न मिली कुए यार में. I had 3 fears in writing this book. The first came from self-awareness. I am not a good writer. I don't think many civil servants are, despite our confidence in our ability to do everything. So I got Pritika and Manish to help me. My second fear was that any book hung on memories would dance close to the poison of ego. I searched the text multiple times to purge the word I, and still don't believe it conveys that everything was teamwork. Finally, as a practitioner, not an academic, I intuitively grasped the medical wisdom that a post-mortem has a certainty that a prescription never can. Hopefully, being physically away from J&K for 2 decades has given me the honesty that accompanies the long eye of time. The thesis of this book is simple. It uses a bifocal lens of history, the past as past and the past as present, to suggest that peace and prosperity in J&K have been undermined by 5 interconnected forces that I will briefly cover. First, Pakistan. Kashmir became the vessel for Pakistan's anger at itself because its founding idea, the two-nation theory that Hindus and Muslims can't live together, died at birth, with a majority of Muslims staying back in India during partition. Terrorism wouldn't exist in J&K without Pakistan's terror factory of 2 installment strategy for Kashmir, independence to be followed by annexation. Second, Cold War geopolitics. Kashmir became a pawn in the Cold War chessboard after India asked for United Nations intervention on 1st January 1948. Despite 13 UN resolutions being passed over the next decades in favor of Pakistan, India refused to compromise its sovereignty while Pakistan embraced America. This partnership and military bases gave Pakistan courage, money, and air cover. Third, radical Islam. The Sufi Islam sect called Ahle Etiqad, to which most Kashmiris belong, has nothing in common with the Wahhabis. Kashmiri Islam values ziyarats, that is shrines, while such relics are considered Butt Parasti or idol worship by the Wahhabis. Sheikh Abdullah suggested that Kashmiri Muslims' religion was a mixture of Rishi worship, Buddhism, Shaivism, and Sufism with a veneer of Orthodox Islam. I was sad that a Kashmiriyat, a term hard to define, but captured a very real mixture of culture, religion, and tolerance, didn't prevent the ethnic cleaning of the valley's Hindus. However, Kashmirians is authentic, and radical Islam's tools of terror, guns, and religious conservative are alien. Fourth, fraught federalism. Most other state governments only deal with Delhi's pillars of power infrequently, but J&K has found it more challenging to find the Madhyam Marg, that is the middle path, between unitary and federal forces, especially when lasting peace required two decisions which only Delhi could make, that is, abrogating Article 370 and cross-border military strikes. Finally, the separatist politics. Article 370 made soft separatism a profitable local political strategy that reaped a harvest of fear, wealth, and dynastic politics. India has created the world's largest democracy on the infertile soil of the world's most hierarchical society because of her competitive politics, which breeds ideas, realism, and compromise. But J&K suffered elite capture and became a closed society, economy, and polity. I am happy that the probability of a Naya Kashmir has risen for 5 reasons. First, the abrogation of Article 370 will prevent J&K's politicians practicing what Kashmiris call Moolan Drot de Patran Sag, which means watering the leaves while cutting the roots. Second, cross-border strikes by the Indian military create consequences for Pakistan's terror factory. Nobel laureate Thomas Schelling's framing of deterrence as the promise of future pain. Third, radical Islam is now accepted as a global problem. In 1995, when I warned visiting FBI and American embassy officers that terrorists were turning their attention to the West, they dismissed it as self-interest trying to internationalize an India-Pakistan issue. Fourth, Pakistan's rising economic and political weaknesses weakens its garrison state. Finally, India's rising economic and political strength make peace in Kashmir more likely. The Subedar Major in my grandson's favorite movie, Laksha, says, and I quote, "A soldier in uniform understands war is hell more than anybody else." Therefore, security forces in a democracy are tasked with shortening the lives of terrorists, but ending terrorism requires changing the game rather than playing the old one better. Terrorists everywhere are similar. They ignore the laws of war by removing the distinction between combatants and non-combatants, peddle falsehoods about religion, and legitimize mass murder. Those who kidnap, assassinate, bomb, and maim children, women, and men in the name of Islam do not represent Islam. I was therefore not surprised when Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan only 54 kilometers from the last J&K police post in Tithwal. I pray that Kashmiris now see Pakistan in their own phrase, Lukan Hund, Khun Lukni Mut, which means smearing the blood of the people on their own faces. I also pray that Pakistan's Awam recognize that its garrison state narrative of a conspiracy to destroy the Pakistani Qawm by Hanud, Yahud, and Nasara, that is, Hindus, Jews, and Christians, is military self-interest. As historians remind us, in peace, sons bury their fathers. In war, fathers bury their sons. During my decades of service in J&K, Kashmir bade me farewell, saying, "Ghashte Kormukh, Khudaya Sawale." Go, I have handed you over to God. I offer this precious dua to the next generation of politicians, civil servants, and police officers in J&K. They will do what our generation didn't. Thank you all for listening and coming here.
So I'll just invite, Papa wanted his book launched with his colleagues. So there is a sort of a lineage of all the DGs who came after him. So could I call Farooq Khan uncle, could I ask Dilbag uncle, and could I ask Rajendra uncle, and also Gil uncle to come on stage. And also, I think Amarjot uncle, since you're mentioned so much in the book, please come. Since you're so much. Please come in the Papa, Thank you. Thank you. No, yes, yes. Done? Yes. So he wanted to have a conversation with the three people who took over, their J&K Police colleagues. And obviously, you were DG till a few months ago, you were DG till a few years ago, and in some sense, Farooq uncle was one of Papa's favorites. So, in so many ways that matters, but he was the one who set up the Special Operations Group of J&K Police, which was really the only response after decades of sort of falling apart. So, one of my favorite books about Bhutto is Born to be Hanged. It is iski shamat aayegi kisi din. Nobody knows when, but this guy is going to be hung someday. I wanted your responses on whether Kashmir was born to see violence because of the two-nation theory, because of Bangladesh. Was it necessary? We can start with Rajendra uncle because I know you don't think so.
That's a very difficult question he has asked me. I will try to respond to that. Kashmir has two dimensions. The external factor, that is the geopolitics, especially the Pakistan factor, and the internal factor. A section of population in Kashmir always wanted to be a part of Pakistan, and majority of them nursed the idea of being independent The idea is still there. Now, revocation of Article 370 has addressed the internal dimension, and also Sabharwal sir, who just said he couldn't settle down despite his 4-decade long service, and so was I. Now, this is adequately addressed by taking lot of legal and administrative actions, which resulted in complete cessation of street protests, organized stone pelting, hartals, etc., etc. So to that extent, Kashmir today is very well under control, extremely peaceful. The number of terrorists has come down from thousands to double digit. A great, achievement by the government, by the security forces, by everyone, the police, and all put together. Now, how about the external factor? That external factor remains. So, as long as that external factor remains, Kashmir continues to bleed.
I'll come back to that question. What do you think?
I think I will start from where Rajendra sir left, the external factor. The situation that we saw some over 6 months back, somehow that scenario seems to have been slightly disturbed after a sizable number of terrorists getting in from Pakistan. So that means the tap is controlled by Pakistan, not by us. So how strongly we can put our security grids in place, how strongly we can counter that external factor is very important, both militarily and maybe politically at some level.
Uncle?
Kashmir, whatsoever Rajendra sir has said, Dilbag sir, and over and above all, Sabharwal sir. Kashmir today is at a very crucial juncture of history. We all know 370 has been abrogated. We all know Kashmir is quite peaceful. The very fact that lakhs and lakhs of tourists are visiting there, and this year we had a record number of Amarnath Yatris going there. But then simultaneously you also come across those news items that 5 of our brave soldiers have been martyred at one place or the other. So those things are there. Pakistan would keep on doing the mischief, but the very fact which is known to almost all of us and those who have been dealing with Kashmir and the problem there, that great thing is that in these recent attacks, not one single local militant has been seen to have been involved in that. That shows that a large size of the problem has been taken care of. The remaining terrorists, as Dilbag sir has mentioned, and Rajendra sir also, that from thousands, we have seen thousands of militants, all of us. And now we have seen the number dwindling to around 120, 130 or so. That is in both the provinces of the UT. Now that number is mostly, they are all 100% Pakistanis. There are certain indications that probably a couple of Afghan militants have also joined their ranks. The quality or the viciousness shown by those terrorists is something which we can only discuss among ourselves. But the day is not far that Kashmir separatist thinking, which is almost dead, is going to be buried for once for all. And as far as these 120, 130 terrorists are concerned, whether they are from Pakistan, Afghanistan, or any place for that matter, they would be taken care of. Our forces are good enough to take care of much larger numbers, and we suffer casualties here and there.
But you're getting it done. Perfect. So Papa mentioned 5 interconnected forces which led to terrorism: Pakistan, Cold War, radical Islam, fraught federalism, and separatist politics. So let me ask you the Pakistan question, Uncle, and I'll ask them others. Steve Cohen is one of my favorite analysts of Pakistan. He says that Pakistan is the only country that negotiates with a gun to its own head. बात नहीं मानोगे खुद को गोली मार दूंगा. So in some sense, would there be terrorism in Kashmir without Pakistan? Yes.
Well, countries have armies, whereas Pakistani army is the only one which has a country.
Absolutely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan has a very clear policy as far as Kashmir is concerned. That is to bleed India by 1,000 cuts and annex Kashmir, come what may. So, irrespective of the governments we have in Pakistan, they would continue to infiltrate the terrorists, train them, and then continue to foment the trouble. While quantitatively the numbers have come down, like Farooq Saab has said, qualitatively the attacks have improved. Better quality, well-trained terrorists are being sent inside. Better weapons, which even our forces do not possess, are being recovered from them. So yes, the answer is
Pakistan is important.
Pakistani involvement is there right from the beginning, and it will continue. We need to address Pakistan, raise the cost for every attack here. We need to pay it back, raise the cost accordingly to Pakistan.
So, Cold War geopolitics. Is it a coincidence that the first Kalashnikov in 1988 was recovered by Hamid Sheikh uncle in Kupwara from the oven of his mother, BSc graduate Manzoorul Islam? And the Haji boys then happened after. Is there a coincidence that when America left Afghanistan, this happened, or is it connected? Is the fact that America sort of financed the Mujahideen against Russia and then left them, and then, or was it independent?
Well, to my humble assessment, I don't think there was any such major impact on Kashmir situation once Americans left Afghanistan. Yes, there are certain reports, not exactly reports, but assessments that some of the weapons which are being used by the current crop of militants in Kashmir and Jammu, those have been in the hands of Americans, and when they left those weapons in Afghanistan, and the weapons have come. But having been involved in this ball game for a pretty long time, a weapon, a particular kind of weapon coming to J&K would not mean exactly that this is coming through certain, well-made channels.
Okay.
Weapons in Pakistan are dime a dozen. You go and pick up any. You want to have a tank, you can have that. Yes, it's not a joke because it happens there. If you look at the arms market in the Northwest frontier, you would see that machine guns and all those kinds of anti-aircraft guns. There was a time when certain missiles were also available in those shops. Having said that, because Kashmir's local involvement in the terror activities has come down sharply, but that doesn't mean that the separatist feelings have died down. Those are there, and we have to take care. We have to take care that any misstep from our side might not give a reason for the local youth to rejoin this, because these to my knowledge, these foreigners are trying their level best to have some local boys involved. And the great thing is that not a single boy has joined them, and the major factor behind that is that in certain areas where these terrorists had been moving around, they were contacting the locals. The local, especially the Muslim population, they have sent all their young boys, that means 14 above, they have sent them away from those places.
To
They
Bangalore?
told them to go to, yes. If you welcome them, I would definitely pass on the word.
Okay.
So that is the,
So, Uncle, you've been in many districts, and I did want you to reflect on a comment Papa made about radical Islam versus Kashmiri Islam. You have seen it in Anantnag, you've seen it in Baramulla, I know you've seen it and we've talked about it over the years. Just give your thoughts on how is Kashmiri Islam different from Wahhabi Islam?
Your dad said it's a difficult question for me, but since I've been there for quite some time now, I think when we landed in Kashmir much later than your dad became as kids, even we saw that Kashmir was a different place altogether. The way people choose to go and pray at the shrines and mix up with each other freely, gradually we saw that things were changing. And suddenly that radical form of Islam became attraction for the youth for recruitment into militant ranks. And I think that one factor, radicalization through various social media channels available to Pakistan agencies, put a great challenge how to check that kind of radicalization being spread without any interface being identified. It was all happening, somebody sitting in Pakistan, a group of people is being contacted here only through social media channels. The boy is radicalized to the extent that he's given a target, somebody goes and hands him a weapon, and without knowing what he's going to do, he goes and picks up a target and goes and shoots him. Things went up to that level, to that extent 2-3 years back. As Farooq Sahab said, we've been able to gradually address this problem by way of changing our strategy, how to approach our youth, how to deal with them at our level, how to engage them in positive activities. But the radical form of Islam certainly has found a way in Kashmir in a very big way. And I think as he made a mention that Wahhabi kind of Islam, which was not at all a part of Kashmir's culture or Kashmir's religious practices, is now there in a quite sizable number.
Okay.
Almost every village in Kashmir would have a mosque which is now associated with the Wahhabi cult. So I think that is something worrisome.
We have to.
And that's a long-term threat which needs to be addressed.
Okay. So, Uncle, I just wanted to get your talk. Papa also mentioned separatist politics being a profitable strategy. Now, you live in Andhra Pradesh, I live in Bangalore, people here are from Chennai. I mean, all of them fight with Delhi. Most of them would, consider, Indira Gandhi in 10 of her speeches said strong states lead to a weak nation. But N.T. Rama Rao, the trust that you now run, responded saying that the central government is a conceptual myth. Everything that matters to people's lives is done by the state government. But why did soft separatism become a profitable political strategy? And I remember you talking about what the promises Mufti made to become chief minister. What were the promises Mufti made?
A very dicey question he asked. But then I need to speak the truth. The fact was, they have been pandering to addressing the separatist section. I think this is somewhere around 2002 assembly elections. Around that time, a political party, a regional political party was formed. Something, as a counter to the existing national conference. So the PDP was formed as a counter so that people will get an alternative. Rather than choosing one political party, having a brute majority, then you also have an alternative to the people. So based on that, when a party was formed, they went to the polls on the promise of disbanding the SOG, the Special Operations Group, which was primarily responsible and the brainchild of Sabharwal Saab, and Farooq was fully associated with that. It was mainly responsible for launching operations and cleaning up the areas. They co-opted a large number of the Ikwanis, got a large number of people overground, went into both covert as well as overt operations. Created a very conducive atmosphere in 1996, which resulted in elections, had a representative government. Subsequently, in 2002, when elections were to be held, Mufti Saab, his one-point program was to disband the SOG. And the second one was not to implement the POTA, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which was a successor of TADA. Now, these are the two conditions where you said, okay, I'll disband the SOG. Since SOG was responsible for establishing normalcy, one of the demands of the separatists or the HM, the people who have been released for a period of time, who supported the party in large numbers, came out and voted for them. That has been met with. The minute they came to power with 16 MLAs, supported by another national party, which I would not like to name. But the factor was the political parties were addressing a particular section of separatists, and they have supported them in coming to power. Once in power, you can imagine, so J&K is the only state, General, I must confess here, where your own child, that is SOG, a tool which has controlled terrorism, is being disowned. The governments don't want to own it up, so change the name. You want the results, the government has to be there, but then you don't own the force. And the government of India, I think, we have got a very senior officers here. We fought with the government in terms of getting some additional allowances for the special operations groups because they have been doing an outstanding job. We need to pay them a bit extra. Some allocation was made for that purpose in the budget. But when this new government came to power in 2002, we just could not even disburse about it, and it just lapsed.
Okay.
That's it.
So I wanted to follow up a question with you, Uncle. You know, one of the key aspects of terrorism is you need the police and the paramilitary and the army to work together. And that was not always true before, for the interim period, because everybody was getting used to terrorism when the SOG worked. And when you were there with the SOG, obviously it worked. How does that happen? Is it now time for putting J&K Police back in front? But J&K Police standalone can't do it without paramilitary and army. So it's not one versus the other. But because without local knowledge, I remember people, terrorists shaking hands with the, people from outside and walking away. And, so unless you know the language, unless you know that, and you've made that point many times. So I wanted you to elaborate on how this partnership could work, or in the past or in the future.
It worked very well earlier also, and it is more important today. Police doesn't have to come forward, it is already on the front. Probably at certain levels, local levels, one commander is not, very comfortable with the police chief of the district, and there might be certain, ego clashes. But by and large, all the team heads, army, police, and paramilitary forces, they have realized this, that they cannot work without each other. They just cannot. And wheresoever they have tried to, leave one important segment of this team aside, they have suffered very badly. Very badly. Sometimes the operations go bad. Classic example is Charar Sharif. Then there are so many other examples. But wheresoever we have worked together, like we worked together in Hazratbal, Gelsa was our chief at that time, provincial chief. Sabharwal sir was the DG. And we did Hazrat Bal operation. And there was absolutely zero collateral damage. And we could take care of about 26, 27 terrorists in one go.
So just for those who don't know, there were 2 sieges at Hazrat Bal. In fact, one of the chapters in the book is a tale of 2 sieges. The 1993 one, there were 33 terrorists who surrendered 32 days later. In the 1996 one, there were 26 terrorists killed in one night in an operation at that. So to move on from that to happier things, the actual abrogation of 370 happened when you were DG. It was very peaceful. Well done. What were people in Kashmir saying and thinking when it happened? And is Ajay here? Ajay Bisaria? There you are. So I will ask you what was Pakistan thinking. He was the ambassador in Pakistan on the day and he got kicked out. they withdrew his credentials. But first, let's hear what were people saying and thinking when Article 370 was announced?
See, it was a very difficult call. But one was getting certain hints that something big is going to happen. And even that full sort of disclosure never came to people. It came only in pieces. People at the top asking if something big is done, the worst kind of land order to be handled, what is the kind of preparedness, can we do it? When I was asked this question, can we do it? My reply was, have we decided to do it? And they said yes. I said, then we can do it. If we have decided to do it, then we'll do it. But if you're asking me, no one will say yes. But if it has been decided, then leave it to us, we'll manage it. But to give you a little backgrounder, 2018, 17 was very bad. 16 was worse than Burhan Wani's killing and all, and a very long land order situation which led to so many civilian killings. After that, number of terrorists suddenly went up. Pakistan tried to fish in troubled waters, and number of terrorists went up. 18 was a big challenge, and 2018 we were able to turn the tables on their side. We were able to take care of very large number of commanders, and big challenge came that commanders will not get a ceremonial burial. So that was the first big challenge that came to us. And each one of us said, how can it be done? Even I said it. Then again, from the other side, they said, this also has been decided. We have to do it. So I said, if you have to do it, then we will bloody well do it. There's no other option with us. And we start preparing for that. And 18, I remember, big number of commanders. Then 19, the D-Day, Jatra was on, and I got a hint that something, they said, can we wind up the Jatra? Well, the Jatra is on. How long will it take? I said, maybe a couple of days. No, the shortest possible time. I said 72 hours. Can we do it in 72 hours? I said, yes, we will do it. So that is how it started. And then people thought when we started conducting forces, we had to dig in certain excuses. We come up with certain excuses, but somebody said,
So
you
fibbed.
Kuch hone wala hai. And look at my fate. I was going Thana to Thana, subdivision to subdivision, district to district. I have to convey that something big is being prepared, be ready. This is going to be a strategy. This is how we'll handle the situation. But still not telling them what are we going to do ultimately. No one was disclosing. I did not disclose anything. But then my commanders were very, very supportive. I had a 2IC in Swam Pani, who is, God bless him, he's a wonderful guy.
Current DG.
And we, together from the police side, then from the army side, Dylan, we are going to be on TV show. after a little while, me and Dylan both, I would be leaving and going for some TV talk. He was there, and the understanding, you raised a question, working together, jointmanship. I said, this was perfect.
In Article 3.
It was perfect, and it continued to be. I stayed there over 5 years as DG. It continued to be like that.
Let's hear from Ajay.
Yeah, and thanks, Manish.
Sorry, I cold call you.
Not at all.
You were
not
the
at
ambassador
all.
on the day of abrogation. So what did Pakistanis say? Were they happy?
So, while Dilbag was in Srinagar, I was just 400 kilometers west in Islamabad when it happened. So, the Indian move actually plunged Pakistan into complete confusion. Normally, Pakistan knows what is on India's mind. It anticipates, it plans war games. This time, there was complete confusion because they could not quite anticipate this. They thought it would be 35A, a minor tinkering, but Article 370 plunged them in confusion. And because of this confusion, I think there were various options being discussed in Pakistan. This was a time when you had a hybrid regime of Imran Khan and the army. And a very inexperienced Imran Khan had to deal with this problem because the army chief, then General Bajwa, was coming up for a extension, and he was not really involved with this problem. So what really happened was Pakistan considered all options. It escalated the rhetoric. It said that India has sieged Kashmir, it has seized Kashmir, it has changed everything. It tried to consider the military option, which was there was even a mobilization of Kabalis and Pathans to march onto Kashmir, but that was stopped. There was an attempt to internationalize the issue suddenly and promote the narrative that India had done something dramatic, but that didn't work because this time no one in the world was buying it. So the military option was ruled out. The international traction option didn't exist. So all they could do was kick out the Indian High Commissioner, yours truly, which it turned out to be, the least painful option in that case. And fortunately, the predictions that Pakistan made that there would be rivers of blood flowing if Article 370 was ever removed, all this was negated thanks to the wonderful actions that the army and the police took, and the anticipatory anti-terrorism grid that was made. I think that was a remarkable achievement.
Thank you. Ajay has a great book called Anger Management on Pakistan. I would recommend reading that. So we can do a few questions here. We're wrapping up the panel, and then so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to. Yes, Arvind.
The optimism expressed earlier that things may now be returning to normal, with 700,000-800,000 troops still there. I mean, when do you see a time when it's really normal? And secondly, I have an uncle who's trying to buy a piece of land in Pahalgam. It's taking weeks to transfer it. So what do you mean by
that happens in Bangalore too?
I think the reasons here are a bit different.
So, do you think we will ever reduce the size of the Indian Army in J&K? But it's our border, so I don't know.
Once a very respected Minister of State at that time, I'm talking about 2000, 2001 probably, he raised this question with me. He had to go to Vaishno Devi, and on his way back, the train was late, and he was forced to spend some time with me. And, out of the blue, he tells me, कि फारूक जी ये इतनी हमारी आर्मी इधर लगाई है, and he was Minister of State for Home, sir. इतनी आर्मी यहाँ पर लगाई है, ये क्यों नहीं है उनको रोकते, ये कैसे आ जाते हैं अंदर? I was flabbergasted. I said, MOS Home is asking me this question. तो मैंने कहा सर आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हो, ये कुछ गड़बड़ हो रही है बॉर्डर पे, तो आप ऐसा करें, हमारे पास 2-3 घंटे हैं और मैं आई वाज इन जम्मू, सो मैंने कहा अखनूर तक जाते हैं, साथ ही 1-1.5 घंटे में हम पहुंच जाएंगे। अब खुद जरा देखो ये आर्मी कर क्या रही है और बीएसएफ ये क्या कर रहे हैं उधर। You know, being a die-hard politician, he could immediately see that I'm preparing some kind of trap for him. Now, I mentioned it. This was the understanding. This border of ours, one can only see the practicalities of guarding that border once you see that. We have a fabulous fencing. Apparently, no human being can, cross that fencing. But yet the fencing is crossed. There are means, there are tactics, and we cannot bring down the number of troops drastically. We have to have, because it's an international border, then it's line of control. So we have to keep some solid presence, deterrent presence always there
In the border.
on the borders. And while we were talking, Manish, you would forgive me for that. We have not been mentioning the role of the civil officers. We couldn't have, no amount of police actions, army actions, CRPF actions could have brought us to the stage today at which we are. But for, the civil officers, our deputy commissioners, our divisional commissioners, our home secretaries, our chief secretaries, our secretaries of the other departments, they go, kind of unrecognized. Their work had been superb. Suppose we catch a militant and I want to have a remand from a magistrate. There was a time there was no magistrate available to us. Not a single magistrate. The judicial magistrates were not ready to sign the document. It was the civil officers who could make use of their inherent powers and give us. So their role had been tremendous, and we always knew that the civil officers is behind me. As a district officer, as a district head, I knew the deputy commissioner is there to take care of problems which I might be facing. We had to, do the...
Agreed. We acknowledge them. We should just tell them to write their own book. Do you have a question? Quick one? Yes.
One ingredient, if each of you were to give one ingredient or one step that if you had all the powers that could change the game in Kashmir from here on, what would each one of you recommend?
Including me?
You too.
Break the Allah, America and Army, the 3A connection of Pakistan. You go ahead. Uncle, would you like to say first?
Nobody should be playing games with the situation for petty interest, for petty political interest. There was a mention about soft separatism. Soft separatism in Kashmir is all thanks to Delhi. There were times when soft separatism was a big bonus earning industry. There are still certain people, and I won't shy away from saying that still there are certain people who have absolutely no relevance on ground, but they keep on talking about Kashmir, 370 should be brought back, statehood should be immediately granted, and so on and so forth. And always having a flavor of soft separatism. And we
should
from Delhi, we are encouraging them.
So we should shut them down.
Sir would go to Delhi, or Dilbag sir, or Sabharwal sir. Probably they would be given a component of security cover, a gypsy in the front, a gypsy in the rear, and a BP vehicle. I don't think more than that would be there. But if you see those soft separatists of today, you would find 6 vehicles, 7 vehicles going, 4 BP vehicles, and I can name those. And we are still, kind of tinkering with the same thing, which earlier governments before 2014, we have seen that soft separatism was being encouraged from
You
Delhi.
mentioned once you didn't know whether to arrest or give security to Yasin Malik, right?
No, Yasin Malik.
No, I'll ask Uncle to now come in. You come
There
in.
are not many relations with Yasin
I
Malik.
left that one because I've heard you say it. On one day I was told to give security, and on one day I was told to arrest him.
A similar narrative. I would rather say raise the cost to Pakistan, because while we have physically integrated the state with the rest of the country, Sabharwal sir used to always say the issues are because of incomplete integration of J&K with the rest of the country. Now that part has been taken care of, but the issue of soft separatism is going to continue. If we Indian state continues to be soft towards the people who push this issue of soft separatism. So rise above all political considerations and be come very hard on Pakistan while dealing with them. And don't thank Pakistan for holding peaceful elections in J&K. And I know whom I meant. My colleagues here who definitely can collect. Because on the very first day of forming the government in J&K in 2014, a particular chief minister during the press conference thanked Pakistan for allowing the elections to take place peacefully.
What's the one thing you would suggest?
I would say we've been able to bridge the gap between us and the people to a very large extent, but there's still many gaps still existing. We need to respect people's sentiments, get closer to them, give them better access. Today, if one thing is one of the biggest casualties, that is public trust in us. We've been able to take care of it to some extent, but a lot needs to be done, winning over the public interest.
So last question we'll take.
The film made on the Article 370, how accurate is it?
I think that's above the pay grade of everybody here, including me.
Second, if I can then get an answer. I have a village in Akhnur. My father and all my brother-in-laws, everybody's been in the army. And now this trouble which is happening, and I heard you say that it's very much more specialized kind of activity happening. So is this going to perpetuate for some time before we can get it? Because as you rightly said, it doesn't seem to be ordinary folks you can catch. So is it likely, because that's the region that will be most affected? So what is our prognosis?
Go for it.
Very pertinent question, sir, but I would like to answer your first question first.
Okay.
For me, it's religiously no to any picture on Kashmir. I have never seen a picture on Kashmir. I would never see a movie on Kashmir. Because for us, those who have seen the reality on ground, I'm sure a picture would, any serious picture for us would be a comedy. So that's that.
And this also falls in that category on.
Okay.
I don't know. And to your second question, sir.
We're out of time, sir.
With your background, sir, we are competent enough, the forces are competent enough to take care of this problem. And shortly you would start seeing the results coming.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're out of time here. We're running really badly. So they will be here. So please meet with them after this. Okay, last one or two. Yeah, I'm getting Shekhar. Okay, and yes.
I don't have a question. I just have a footnote that the chief minister who thanked Pakistan was a chief minister in coalition partnership with the BJP. So that's a footnote that must be noted.
Okay.
Yeah, one question.
Shekhar, let me also add to that, being a witness to that, Shekhar. Yeah, I would respond to that, being a party to the entire press conference. The coalition partner who was the deputy chief minister just walked out of the press conference immediately. The minute it was thanked, the deputy CM walked out.
Short question.
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
Last one, sir.
absolutely.
Really out
short.
of time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Now, Mr. Mahendra Sabharwal was lamenting that he couldn't settle down in Kashmir from where he retired. I want to ask him if he had retired from Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, anywhere, he would have settled down. There are Article 371, A, B, C, D in all the northeastern states.
Yeah.
So and this Article 370 was withdrawn for majority appeasement.
Okay.
It was a
comment?
No, my first was a question, and second, I'm just adding that the abrogation of Article 370 was unconstitutional.
Okay. The Supreme Court doesn't agree with you. No, I'd say you've answered your question.
Those who are allotted to those states
are allowed to live there. It's a complicated question.
Even Maharaja's law, which they are using, Maharaja used to allow officers brought from outside to be given some jagir or land and all that.
Okay.
Now these fellows have completely, hijacked that provision.
That's okay.
To suit their self-interest and soft separatism.
Yeah. Anyway, the book is about Kashmir, and he wanted to live there. He didn't want to live in Nagaland. So, no doubt, I think that as he wrote an article in Indian Express today saying the task is unfinished. There's no doubt, as you hear from everybody here, that there is Aman ki alamat is a nice word I've often heard. The prospects for peace have considerably improved in Kashmir. But, there's also a wonderful story about Deng Xiaoping in China. He goes to a construction site and the construction engineer tells him, "Sir, the project is 90% complete." So he says, "Congratulations, only 50% of the work is left." The last 10% of getting Kashmir back to normalcy is a lot of work. It's a lot of risk taking. It'll be a lot of persistence. But removing Article 370, cross-border strikes were a necessary but not sufficient condition for peace. But as every strategist knows, necessary comes before sufficient. So thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to be here. Chalo, aap niche chalo. We're not done yet. Please sit down. Please sit down. 2 minutes. Come, let's finish it off. Can I now? Quick. Come on. Sure, I'll do it. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Noor. This is Raghav and this is Dhruv, and Mr. Sabharwal is our grandfather. We are delighted that he's written this book, and though we weren't alive to see him in uniform, I think we can all agree that he's very handsome in the photo that's on the book jacket that was taken 24 years ago. Today, we all miss our grandmother, who we lost less than a year ago. And no, today will be hard for Baba, but we take solace in what St. Augustine said, that people who leave us are not absent, but merely invisible. We're going to try and give you a small glimpse into the book by reading out 3 paragraphs, one each, to give you a sense of the viewpoint that Baba takes. Raghav?
I quote, "Veena broke her promise to leave this world after me. Our children often introduced her as the reason I reached the peak of my profession, and I agree. We were married for 58 years, despite different interests, instincts, and inclinations. Or perhaps it was because of these differences. I miss her, and I wait to join her. Anybody who loses a spouse knows that the motivation to do anything is torture to find. But this book was Veena's wish, so I got over my feelings and finished it."
I quote, "Soon after the events at Hazratbal in 1993, I asked for a one-on-one meeting with Governor Rao. I was tired of the J&K Police's role being reduced to writing panchnamas and FIRs for terrorist strikes. And I made the case for the J&K Police to return as the face of anti-militancy operations. A little after midnight on 17 June 1994, 6 months after the terrorists' surrender in the first siege of Hazratbal, and 24 hours after they were officially formed, the SOG of J&K Police carried out their first mission in Malagam village, located about 100 kilometers from Srinagar. This operation synthesized everything I wanted in the J&K Police's terrorism response: specific intelligence, detailed scenario planning, no civilian casualties, no collateral damage, and teamwork with the army and paramilitary forces, but with the actual operation being carried out by police officers equipped with the latest gear, weaponry, tactics, and training.
And lastly, I quote, "After his heart attack in June 1982, Sheikh Sahib grew frail and was confined to his residence. For the first time, he had foregone participating in the Eid prayers at Eidgah and the politically important Martyrs' Day event. I was surprised to receive a message that Sheikh Sahib and Begum Abdullah wanted to privately visit the Hazratbal Nagin Lake area and needed me to accompany them. They visited the family of Haji Ghulam Muhammad Bhatt, the owners of the famous Claremont houseboats that was situated at the corner where the Nagin and Dal lakes meet. I was saddened when I realized what this hour-long meeting was for. Under the Islamic tenets, a Muslim can choose his last resting place by purchasing and paying for the land. The concertina wire, sand bunkers, and police platoon now needed to protect this grave site from desecration symbolize the tragedy and change in Kashmir since his death." I'd like to now call Papa Manish Sabharwal to close.
So thank you all for coming. I just wanted to close here with just a few comments. There's a story about an 18-year-old fresh college graduate who says, "I am so embarrassed and so frustrated with how little my parents know." But the same kid on his 23rd birthday says, "I'm surprised how much my parents have learned in 5 years." I was that graduate. I'm sure some of you were too. Working on a joint project with your father is fun and fulfilling because it gives you a peek into your parents' triumphs, challenges, and hopes. But it also gives you details on a life that sounds like fiction. There was a procession, and I quote from the book, there was a procession carrying dead bodies which was dispersed by the J&K police, and the only arrest that day was one of the dead bodies that tried to get up and run. A helicopter was flying over a meadow at Pahalgam, where a kidnapped American was running helter-skelter for the last 2 days. What are the odds of that helicopter picking up John Childs, who is the only one of the 6 Americans, Westerners, kidnapped that day to still be alive, and he still sends cards to Papa? The Supreme Court insisted on the security forces restoring electricity, water, and food to foreign terrorists who held innocent hostages inside the Hazratbal shrine of 1993. Begum Abdullah responded to attempts to desecrate Sheikh Abdullah's grave with "Na shukre Kashmiri, mere shohar ne inko izzat bakshi." Sheikh Abdullah returned to power with little to show. In 47, the Indian Army acknowledges that he was very important in retaining Kashmir from the Qabalis. But in 53, he was arrested and he spent 23 years in detention. But he came to power in 1975 and didn't have anything to show for 23 years of detention. So Papa asks him, what happened? 23 years, nothing to show. So he says, "Siyasat suleh hai, suleh siyasat hai." Politics is compromise and compromise in politics. He also smiled and said, "Aap abhi chote hain, zindagi suleh hai aur shaadi bhi suleh hai." Or Farooq Abdullah suggesting at a pro-Pakistan match that cheers at the cricket match would make Delhi realize his importance. But more importantly, I love the cheeky description in the book of Farooq Abdullah, saying he was the second most powerful man in J&K as chief minister, because the first most powerful man was the last person who spoke to him. You have to think about that. As somebody born in J&K, I'm sad that today's youth don't have the memories of the wonderful place I do. I'm also sad that J&K has not participated in the economic progress that many parts of India have had. Poet Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, one of Papa's favorites, wrote, "Shama shobhti us bujang ko jiske paas garal ho." Essentially, only the powerful can be kind, benevolent, and generous. Surely the soft power and hard power of India's economics. India exported more software than Saudi Arabia did oil in 2021, and we will soon be the world's third largest economy, is very attractive. Pakistan's economy is now smaller than Maharashtra. Harvard professor Ricardo Hosman, he's one of my favorite professors, suggests that economic development is like a game of Scrabble, right? The more letters you have, the more words you make, and the longer words you make. Vowels are provided by the government and consonants by the private sector. But vowels only come from inclusive governments and inclusive political systems that distribute political power broadly rather than concentrate it, monopolize it, make it dynastic, or hoard it. This was not Kashmir's destiny. Kashmir is an economic infant with few vowels and consonants. There is no wage premium in handicrafts. Carpet weavers get 150 rupees a day, while construction labor gets 600 rupees a day. It mostly comes from outside the state. There are only 200 dental seats. There are only 600 medical seats. Less than 5% of fruits and nuts gets processed. And 50% of the state's graduates go on to master's degrees. The fiscal deficit is obviously out of control. Private credit to GDP ratio in Kashmir is less than Bihar, and J&K Bank is a shame. Private investment was less than 1,000 crores a year before 2019. More than 30% of the population of the valley works for the government. There are 28 employment exchanges which cost 50 crores a year to run and hardly give jobs to anybody. But Kashmir's economic future will be different from the past because its law and order future is different from the past. There is no prosperity without peace. I hope Pakistan's Awam takes Kashmiri mystic Nand Rishi's resolution. I broke my sword and made it sickle. The Kashmiri term for a gap between word and deed, it's a wonderful term, call or fell, is captured when a Pakistani president visiting India in 1987 told an Indian president, "Hum Hindustan ke saath sirf aman aur shanti chahte hain." The Urdi Gyani Zail Singh responded to General Ziaul Haq saying, "General Saab, ek kudi do gal nahi kar sakti, aankh bhi mare to ghungat bhi kadde." A girl can't wink and hide her face at the same time. I'm hoping that people in Kashmir recognize their thoughts. In terrorist Maqbool Bhatt's thoughtful letter to his niece after Operation Searchlight, the genocide conducted by the Pakistan Army in Bangladesh. Rulers who declare war against their own citizens and people cannot offer us anything else but injustice. Pakistan has inspired its terrorist proxies with tales of Russia's defeat in Afghanistan, the US's defeat in Vietnam, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. But those comparisons are highly flawed. Those superpowers were venturing very far from home, while India fights terrorism on its territory with our institutions of democracy and constitution intact. In fact, when Anand Uncle, a mentor for Papa and a former Chief Justice, asked a librarian at Oxford in the 1980s for a copy of the Pakistani Constitution, she smiled and replied, "We don't keep magazines and periodicals." A poet once reminded us, "Qatlgahon se chunkar hamare alam aur niklenge ushaq ke kafile." The caravan of patriots marches collecting the flags from the hands of martyrs on the battlefield. The photographs you see on the screen are pictures of the 2,119 J&K Police and CRPF officers who are no longer with us. It takes me some time always to get through this. Give me a second. And their martyrdom sort of embodies the Kashmiri saying, "Khidmat cheazmat." The last chapter of the book lists their names. The book was actually written in their memory and honor. So in today's world, the biggest generosity is attention, and we thank you for coming. Thank you.